Hello and welcome to another video and podcast from fantasyfootballscout.co.uk. My name is David and today we are continuing with our series of FPL team reveal videos, and I am very happy to be joined by Pranil. You may also know him as Lateriser12 if you follow him on Twitter, or of course if you are a fan of The Wire. He is one of the many fantastic minds that make up that show. It's an absolute pleasure to have you with us here today. How are you doing, and you looking forward to the new season?
Yes, very, very excited to the new season for the new season. Excited to be here chatting with you. For people that don't know, you're actually my first boss in the fantasy world as we know it. So, for the first time I started writing and doing any bits of FPL content, it was under you. So, pleasure to be catching up after all this time.
Yeah, it was amazing, really. I remember when you first sort of came on board and we did some editorial content for Fantasy Football Scout. I was very pleased to get you. You were a bit of a coup in many ways, a big signing. And I mean, what I have to say is that when I first did stuff with Fantasy Football Scout, a lot of the coverage that we did, it was a lot of the time drawn from people predominantly from the UK, and it was really exciting to get someone with more international acclaim and see how you've managed to grow that, with the other guys at the Wire as well. So it must be quite cool to sort of be involved in Fantasy Premier League in a completely different part of the world, where even though you're not in the UK, the enthusiasm for it in terms of yourself, but also those who tune into the Wire every week is massive. Even though it's not even in the same country, it's baffling to me. It must be really cool.
It's great, right? Sports precedes boundaries. And even though FPL isn't a sport, it's just a game that is just loved internationally. Both you and I have made friends literally in every part of the world. I'm sure if you're going anywhere and we're just tweeting we're in this part, I'm sure there'll be at least a couple of people from the FPL community who we'd be happy to just share a drink with.
Yeah, that's the thing. And I remember seeing, just images that the Premier League would do of like FPL meetups in India, for example, and other parts of Asia as well. And it's humbling in many ways just to see how far the love that we have for this game can go and how it can bring people together.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's great, absolutely great. And I am privileged. I feel great to be a part of it. I feel lucky that I get a chance to do this amount of content. And after 3 or 4 years with Scout, it's almost second nature now. I love doing what I do.
Yeah, it's good fun. It's good fun. We've mentioned Scout,
Yeah.
of course. Before we continue, I do have to remind people that now is the best time to sign up for that membership for the new campaign. You're going to get so many things if you do that, not least up to 30% off with the preseason prices. But of course, with that, you're also going to get access to the preseason guide for all the teams, preseason minutes tracker, season points projections, team transfer planners, drafts from the best fantasy managers around, including some former winners, of course, and loads of tables and comparison tools and incredible maps of shots, chances created, XG, all sorts of stuff. There's just the boundaries are just, there are none. There are just so many cool things to get hold of. So make sure you get that sorted. But let's bring it back to today's guest, who, of course, not only has made a name for himself as part of The Wire and the great content he does on Fantasy Football Scout. He's going to blush in just a second because I always like to big this up. This is a man who has finished top of India. So he's won India for FPL twice. I mean, doing it just once is an incredible achievement. To have done it twice, and that is just unbelievable. That's come from the fact that you finished in the top 100 twice. I think it was both of those campaigns that you beat all of your compatriots. I mean, we'll talk a little bit about how you go from one week to the next and your very unique style of management. But I wanted to just capture what that must be like on a personal level to sort of be able to walk around every day and sort of say, I'm the best FPL manager in India twice over.
I don't go around saying that every day, firstly, but it feels great. It always feels surreal. It also means that I've gotten really, really lucky for a couple of seasons as well, because, realizing with the growth that the game has seen in the last few years, it's getting tougher and tougher. So, the thing that actually I take away from that is I want to go for the hat trick. And that sort of facilitates the sort of way I play the game and want to actually play the game this season, which is, I genuinely listen to my gut, have no fear when it comes to playing the game, stick to the basics, which worked for me in the past, maybe which I've forgotten the last year or two, which is just watching tons of football, listening to your gut, doing massive amounts of research when it comes to just reading every article that comes onto the Scout or, getting onto the football forums. Just read, watch. And my entire process is that if you arm yourself with this much information, and because the instinct has worked in the past, just let the instinct do the talking.
Hmm. Yeah, I have to say it's that instinct that I've always found very intriguing. Whenever, certainly going back a few years and editing your articles as well, you're a big fan of upside chasing. Turning around and saying, what's the best possible outcome I can get from this? Why not give it a go? And not only has that worked for those 2 times that you finished in the top 100, you've got an additional 5 finishes, I think it is, in the top 3K as well. So it's very much a tactic that when it pays off really, really well. And I suppose that generally sums up your management style, I guess, unless you want to correct me or add anything to that. It's certainly very unique. I always enjoy listening to your insight.
It's just, every season that you go into, there's a set of ideas that you want to take into. You can't even preempt that, but there's a set of ideas that you want to go into the season with. The season when I had my worst season, which was when I finished in the 600, 700K region, I got too creative, let's say, with my FPL ways. And I was like, no, maybe I need to correct this a little. And, get a little bit of safety into that game, which has sort of creeped into my game the last 2-3 years, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But last season, because of how the second half of the season was, which was very straitjacketed, right? Because of the number of doubles and blanks that we had, there wasn't any room to be creative. And I just felt very claustrophobic. Like, I didn't like playing the game. I didn't enjoy the game. So, the good thing is in the last 5-6 years, I've had 2 bad seasons as well. So the shackles are off. The pressure to finish strong has gone. And I'm setting myself into more all or nothing territory without being that extreme, right? You don't have yeah, I want to give it a real go when it comes to listen to my instinct. And I just don't want to be afraid when making my moves this year.
Yeah, that's an attitude that I think is just really compelling for people, just to not be afraid. And I have to say, it's an attitude that it took me some time to really develop. I used to be very, very conservative as a manager. I would always be that one that was promoting the boring move each week. I'd maybe edit one of your articles where you'd suggest going for something, and I go, oh, that's probably going to work, but I don't know if I'm brave enough to try it. And then, of course, it would usually come off. But in the last year myself as well, I've so many things have sort of just changed in my own personal circumstances, where I realised that the worst case scenario of a potentially upside chasing decision going wrong is a red arrow, and maybe 1 or 2 people think I don't know what I'm talking about. That used to scare me, and as I said, just life goes on in the way that it does. Sometimes you can put it into a different perspective, and I very much feel the same way now. Like, why not give it a go? Why not take the shackles off and have some fun with it? Be creative, be unique, and it's going to be easier to do that this year, hopefully, with a return to normality and things, isn't it?
Let's hope so.
Well, let's have a look at your team, or rather, I should say teams. You've actually sent 2 in, which I really like this because, of course, we are still in that tinkering stage. We, of course, have branded this as a team reveal, but in many ways, lots of teams are still in draft. And it really centers around one Egyptian king, of course, and we'll start with the team that has him in. I'm going to list it off for the benefit of the podcast listeners. It's a 3-5-2. Johnston and Bentley as the goalkeepers, Estupiñán, Akanji, Chilwell as the starting defenders, with Bayer and Kabore on the bench. Then we've got Eze, Rashford, Salah, Foden, Saka. Big 5-man midfield there. Haaland and Pedro as the forwards, and then Mubama on the bench. And of course, the crown jewel is Mohamed Salah, right in the middle of the picture as well. How wedded are you to this? I know you've sent in another team as well, but are you big on the Salah train at the start of the season?
It's not about being big on the Salah train at the start of the season, but there's an opportunity, or a semi sort of opportunity, in Game Week 2 where Salah plays Bournemouth at home, where Haaland does have a home game against Newcastle, but that's perhaps an opportunity to make sort of early gains, and it's about what you're compromising to get these potential early gains if they exist at all. And that's sort of what I've been debating in the last 2 or 3 weeks, and my entire process when I started genuinely messing around with my draft and thinking about how I want my Game Week 1 team to be, is that I like that opportunity for Salah in Game Week 2, and it leads to a lot of other things that happen in my brain in terms of the flexibility that your team has post Game Week 2, because the moment you sell Salah, you can literally buy anybody in the game. And we're seeing a change of fixtures for Chelsea and Spurs, 2 teams that we don't know much about as things stand at the moment. So, the thinking is that if I am able to get Salah in my team, hit that captaincy, it can work, it can't work, but it's a shot. And when I And this is what sort of upside chasing is, where I'm sort of ensuring myself against the Haaland captainers by having Haaland in my team. I'm not going too crazy, but not many people will have Salah. It's the best time to be a differential in the game. It's a home game against Bournemouth. If it works, if Haaland, let's say, gets an assist, and if Salah does a brace or gets a triple return, you're making 20, 30 points on the field. But for that to happen, because the field doesn't have Salah, they've got 3 or 4 upgrades in positions that I don't have certain players. And that's the sort of comparison that I am doing in my head when I'm trying to decide whether I want to go with more or not.
Yeah, I mean, it's very much about the field, isn't it, as you say, because I think I've ever seen Salah's ownership be this low at the start of a campaign, and that makes just such a huge difference in terms of what you can achieve. And I suppose maybe if that Bournemouth game was perhaps game week 4 or 5, by then, maybe the opportunity has been lessened because that's enough time for Salah to well, I mean, I don't think anybody thinks that Salah's going to start the season poorly. I mean, he ended the season very well, has been doing quite well in pre-season as well. It's just about the timing of having him when other people don't have him and therefore don't captain him. And as you say, that in and of itself is upside chasing. It's a chink in the armor of the broader opinion. And you just, rather than sort of maybe try and wiggle a finger into that chink, you just have a whole sword in there.
Yeah. It's just whether we can make it work. And for it to work, there just needs to be enough enablers in the game. Literally, that's about it. And, I might actually ask for your help, because there are certain positions in my team that you see here that are sort of non-compromisable, that I'm fairly sure will be in my team by the time 12th August comes around. So the names that I'm talking about: Estupinan, Chilwell, Rashford, Saka, Haaland, and Eze, who I've grown fond of, especially after watching him play in that game against Sevilla. I think these players will sort of stick around on my team. It's about where do I want to downgrade now. The biggest problem with this draft is if I just have Saka from Arsenal, and Arsenal have a great run of fixtures, especially those first 3 games where they have 2 good-looking home games. And I sacrificed actually Foden. I sacrificed Martinelli and got him down to Foden to sort of accommodate him. But I want Martinelli in my team, especially after the Gabriel Jesus news that we got yesterday, where he's having a surgery. So I want to get Martinelli, but then what else do I sacrifice? That's what's killing me when I'm trying to figure this team out.
It is tricky, isn't it? Because I mean, so I actually had Jesus and Salah, and I had no Arsenal midfielder. So I'm actually faced with an even bigger pickle than yourself, because now I'm just stuck with I need an Arsenal midfielder, and really Salah's the only way in what I've got at the moment to get it. To be perfectly honest, though, I don't think you have to really be that worried about the fact that you've only got one Arsenal, because, and there's an interesting thing that I was talking about with General the other day on our new series, General's Orders. So apologies once again for the silly outfits, but
I thought they were great, by the way.
Thank you very much. Well, I mean, if you like them, that's all that matters.
Yeah. Big props to both of you for being just sports. It's everybody trying to do something different, and we're out here to entertain as well, right? FPL's about having fun as well.
Exactly. Well, we certainly had that. We had fun, but we learned something as well, because the thing that was really intriguing was one of his orders was take away game week 1 from the season ticker. Does that change how you think? And one of the biggest things we noticed was that when you do take Arsenal's first home game against Nottingham Forest out, and you're sorting the season ticker by attack, they do plummet from being the 3rd best team over the first 6 to being sort of like mid-table, 10th, 11th for, how good that attacking potential is over the next 6. I think it was game weeks 2 to 7. Now, of course, the Forest game probably is going to yield a lot of attacking returns for lots of people, but if you just commit and say, look, I'll let everybody have the points for, say, Martinelli or whoever it is the subsequent Arsenal attacker on top of your Saka, and then you don't have to make transfers to, in effect, move away from that attacking double up. You've already got who the next best guy is over the next period. Maybe it's okay. And we've seen Arsenal maybe just struggle a little bit in pre-season as well, because they're reintegrating certain players into the team. They've got new players coming into the midfield. The makeup of the sort of the engine room of that team is in transition, and so I wouldn't be shocked if Arsenal assets maybe don't deliver as well as we think at the start of the season. I don't think they're bad by any stretch, but I don't think that at the same time there's anything really that bad about only having the one attacker. And if it means you can have Salah as well, I mean, you look at how he finished the end of last season. I mean, he was the top player for points after Liverpool switched their new system in game week 30, for example. So it feels like it's not a spicy decision that's sort of for the sake of it. There is a lot of data that suggests that chasing that upside is gonna work. So, I mean, that's just my take. I think that double Arsenal attack is not essential. Is effectively what I'm saying when you consider the fixtures
Yeah.
beyond Forest. So yeah.
It's not sitting right with me though. I'm not gonna lie. Like I want to convert that Foden spot into Martinelli. I'm hoping to see if Kai Havertz sort of opens up as a punt. I want to see what they do in the Community Shield and see if there's any learnings from there. But as much as I can try, I'll try accommodating Martinelli in this team. That probably means actually I've been just thinking about it while we've been talking also, right? Because I need to maybe downgrade a Kanji or a Stupinan to a by 0.5 to accommodate that. Earlier, I had sort of Joao Pedro I had Enciso in place of Eze for that spot. Again, jumping on the Brighton train, but I feel like having Enciso and Pedro might be too much. And Eze just like if you're trying to play around and take a few gambles in your team, Eze seems like somebody I'm comfortable holding throughout. Like he seems to me like a pick that is going to play 90 minutes, and 90 minutes matter now with the new rules in the Premier League as well. You're going to be comfortable. He's going to be sort of talismanic in that team. He's on set pieces as well, probably taking penalties as well. So yeah, maybe the third defender spot is the one to compromise. But
Yeah.
again, every time I look at City's fixtures, I just think not having one, if not two City defenders is silly. But again, there's a little bit of doubt with all of those City defenders in terms of minutes, except Stones and Diaz. And even those defenders don't come cheap. So that's where I am. Struggling, as you can see, trying to figure things out.
We can certainly relate with that struggle for sure, because it's where you make those sacrifices is interesting. I suppose let's have a look at another area where you arguably have made some sacrifices and get your thoughts here. Obviously, in the forward line, you've got Haaland, which makes obvious sense, but you've got Pedro and Mubama. Does that make you nervous a little bit? Because I suppose it's hard to move off those guys to other people. More so with Mubama, of course. Probably just going to be a sub. But with Pedro, I mean, are you interested in the 6 million bracket at all? Or just wonder what your thinking was there. I suppose with Sally, you have already mentioned you could upgrade him with a transfer if need be. But, what's he thinking with your forwards?
Yeah, if I go Foden down, like there is one thought, let's say if I want to play safety with minutes, right? If I get a Foden down to Mitoma, who offers more surety in terms of minutes, I can take Pedro up to Vissa. But that's just not chasing the stars, right? When you're talking about absolute upside. But it leads to a certain level of security in the team in terms of minutes, at least. So that's the combination that I'm thinking about. Like these 3 or 4 or 5 spots is what I'm playing around, where I think Rashford, Salah, Saka, Haaland, Chilwell, they're non-negotiables in my team. Those are players that I really want. It's about playing around with the other. Salah is still in debate, especially because, which we'll see in my no Salah draft, that there are a couple of Liverpool players who are emerging as maybe first choice. So again, a space to monitor.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly a lot to have a look at in pre-season. And one of those things that we have seen in pre-season is, of course, Chilwell has looked very, very good for Chelsea and been very, very attacking. Seems like he's got his fitness in order, which is nice to see as well. Interesting for you to describe as a non-negotiable, because, I mean, a few people are still debating it, but you seem pretty sold on, I guess, Chelsea as well as him, is my guess.
Yeah, it's just a skill set of the player. I am a big Chilwell fan. I absolutely love him. He was, in fact, I was on him 2 or 3 weeks ago. It was before the community started seeing his potential in the last week or so. It's just because of the player that Ben Chilwell is. He's just a defender that's made to attack. A little bit like Baines, where, he's just got that instinct in him. He's quality. He knows how to cross the ball. He knows where the back of the net is. I love him. And Chelsea's fixtures Game Week 3 onwards are great. And he's one of the very few defenders capable of points on both sides of the pitch. And I want to be placing my bets there.
I mean, he's very, very attacking. I mean, I was chatting with Simon March, who, of course, is a Chelsea fan, the other day, and there's a difference between him and Reece James in the way that they play, and arguably the ceiling is higher on Chilwell because he is more of a goal chaser, where James kind of sits that little bit deeper and he sort of loops those balls in from deep, almost a bit like Trent or perhaps maybe De Bruyne. Chilwell just is heading for the dead ball line, isn't he? And he tries to have those shots right near the very close angles at the near post, and quite often hooks it into the top corner, and it's pretty amazing when that comes off.
Yeah, and he's good at them too. So yeah, Nah, I want Chilwell. He's a player I like to watch as well. It's exciting. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to move him.
Yeah, certainly. Well, I mean, the other thing, of course, is that a lot of people may move to him in Game Week 3 when those fixtures get nice. So it's, of course, nice to be involved early on, I suppose. The rest
Yeah.
of your defence, let's talk about the goalkeepers, and then we'll come on to the 4 million defenders. Johnston and Bentley are your two options there. Are you pretty happy with them? I'm guessing that you are. I'm spending no more than 8.5 million on my goalies and go from there, sort of person.
Yeah, I mean, I maybe think about Onana if I had 0.5 more to spend, but I feel like I'm going to use the money and want the money more in my attack, especially if I'm going with more in my team. And, times come when you just want that 0. 0.1, 0. 0.3, 0. 0.4, 0.5 more in attack. That's why I'm comfortable. Uh, you know, there are three keepers that are in my mind right now: Johnston, Pickford, and Flecken. Flecken, the thing is, despite the ridiculously good fixtures that Brentford have, Flecken himself has looked a little dodgy, let's say, when it comes to his shot saving ability. And, keepers and their chemistry with their defenders also matters a lot when it comes to defenses. And they're losing two people at the front and the back of the spine, at least for the first half of the season, with potentially no Raya and no Ivan Toney as well. So I do wonder if we see a little downturn in Brentford's performances. So that's my thinking there. Johnston, because I just genuinely like the spine that Crystal Palace has. Like Johnston, Gay and Anderson, and then Doucouré and Lerma. I think that's a solid five. And we know what Roy Hodgson is like, right? He's always been sort of like a defense first manager. I quite like that team. I think their fixtures are somewhat underrated. They've got Sheffield United away, game week 1. And of course, a tough fixture against Arsenal at home, game week 2. After that, they have Brentford away, Wolves at home, Villa away, Fulham at home. So it's some good games, some bad games. He in the famous free hit week last year, he pulled off a 10-pointer as well. So there's potential there in terms of them maybe conceding slightly lower XG shots and him getting some save points. It's between him and Pickford for me, I think, if I go 4.5.
Yeah, I really like Crystal Palace defence as well. Interestingly, I've been looking at it more as a rotation with the defenders. I've had Mitchell and looking at Villa as well. But I agree with you completely on Flecken. I was very, very big on him earlier on in the preseason. And when we looked at sort of some of the stats around Brentford, thinking, oh, okay, he could do a Raya. But as you say, the clips we've seen, they don't bode well. So I have been thinking of moving potentially to Johnston. Onana, of course, is in the conversation. And that's a decent little segue just to talk about Man United, of course, a team close to your heart as well. You've got Rashford instead of Fernandes. Any debates in your mind there? We've seen some people with both of them, and if I was gonna put money on anyone to have both of them at some point in the season, I'd probably put someone on yourself, being a United fan and someone who likes to double down on opportunities when they arise. So I wondered if that had crossed your mind at all.
Yeah, it has crossed my mind. And the thing is, I just don't have money for Bruno in this sort of setup. If I'm compromising Salah, then Bruno enters my thoughts. But between Rashford and Bruno, like it's easy for me to think of coverage as coverage and downgrade Rashford to Bruno to help me get other players that I want and think, okay, I have at least one United attacker in my head. But that's just a coverage thing. I think Rashford is above Bruno Fernandes as an FPL pick. We're designed to play in a way to create chances for him. He's going to be the primary goal scorer until the time at least Holland sort of acclimatizes with the team and gets used to players around him. But Rashford's the best United pick, and I expect him to carry over from where he left off last season. That's right, Bruno Fernandes, right? I mean, he's a perfectly good pick, but he's just not as explosive as Rashford. I think Rashford has those mega hauls in him. Bruno Fernandes will be in and around the points, but he's sort of like a trickler, where I don't expect him to be very explosive. Still an incredibly good pick at that price. And if I choose to go without Mo Salah in my team, Bruno Fernandes will definitely be in my thoughts.
I suppose Rashford is, especially in your mind, with the way that you like to choose your captaincy, Rashford more captainable than Fernandes probably as well, for the reasons you just described there.
Yeah. And we don't really need to think about the captaincy so much, but Rashford's just the best Manchester United pick, period.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, let's have a look at your other draft then, which is now what you did with the money when you temporarily, I imagine, sold Salah. And it's really interesting because the changes, it doesn't feel all that different in a lot of the really key areas, which I think is great, because when I look at my versions of Salah and no Salah drafts, I'm like, oh, it looks so different. But you've managed to do a very good job here in spreading the cash not too much in some areas, and just spreading it in lots of areas, little bits basically. So you've got Onana as your goalkeeper, so that's a 0.5 extra there. Stones in defence, so that's a 0.5 extra there, and Estupiñán Chilwell still involved, of course. Then your midfield is now Eze, Rashford, Jota, Martinelli, and Saka. Your forward line is Haaland and Watkins instead of Pedro. And interestingly, your bench is still exactly the same: Bentley, Bayer, Kabore, and Mabama. So. Jota, I suppose, let's start with him as your Liverpool alternative. Was that an easy decision to come to, or are you still sort of got your eye on a couple of other Liverpool attackers?
At the moment, I'm looking at Jota because I like this 3-5-2 structure. I like the players in midfield. Darwin's obviously in my thought as well. But with Jota, what I like is he's perfectly capable of playing that left winger or left inside forward or the central attacker for Liverpool. In my opinion, he's one of the best pressers in that Liverpool team as well. And Jurgen Klopp always talks about the key to making into the front three is to defend from the front as well. And that's what got Jota in towards the end of last season as well. So, and then he's, again, when Jota's on the pitch, he's got that knack for scoring. Like, he's just a goal scorer. He knows how to put the ball in the back of the net. So if I'm convinced enough that Jota looks good for the minutes, because the thing is, though, I won't be comfortable or as comfortable captaining a Jota in game week 2 then I probably captain a Haaland or a Watkins who faces Everton at home in game week 2. That's the thing. But it doesn't offer the upside that a Salah does, especially when we're talking about maybe attackers getting 10, 15 minutes more as well, because of how the extra time is going to work. It's going to be more like the World Cup. So you really want those 90-minute attackers in your team that sort of don't get subbed off, which is what the attraction with Salah is.
Yeah, I mean, Jota has historically been used as a bit of a, if he's going to start the game, maybe comes off around 70 minutes, or maybe comes off 59 minutes. You don't want that, especially. And there's lots of options there. I mean, I suppose the handy enough thing is that he is doing okay for minutes in the preseason. So 180 minutes for him, and only Gakpo and Salah have more minutes than him, who are in the front, who you would expect to be in the front three than him. More versatility than perhaps Nunez, for example. And he's been doing well. I think it's 3 goals, I think, for Jota in the preseason, something along those lines.
And has looked pretty good as well. So
yeah. So it's, as you say, it does sort of change how you view certain areas of the team. I suppose you've already mentioned Watkins. Let's talk about him now. He, in many ways, has become even more relevant to absolutely everybody in the fantasy community in the last 24 hours because, of course, he does look like the go-to alternative for people who want to stay on an 8 million striker, but they can't have a Jesus because it looks like he's going to miss the start of the season. My guess is you were probably already thinking about Watkins before then anyway, but his credentials just got a bit better, is my guess, is how you view it.
Yeah, perfectly good pick. Again, a 90-minute man, probably going to be on penalties as well. Definitely going to be on penalties, I think. Aston Villa are designed to create chances for Watkins, as we saw towards the end of last season. I think they're a team with tremendous upward trajectory. I thought Emery and Aston Villa have had a great transfer window in the summer as well. I think Pau Torres is going to revolutionize how they build from the back. Tielemans is a great addition in midfield. Diaby, who is somebody I'm considering at the moment, who might be playing next to Watkins as well. Just a team I'm expecting to be really, really good this season. Carry off from where they left off last year.
And I suppose
just a good pick.
Yeah, there's not much to dislike here, is there? And he also offers you that extra bit of flexibility, I suppose, that if, because you mentioned at the beginning, maybe you want to see a bit more out of Chelsea. Could you see yourself maybe using him as a route to Nkunku or Jackson if they hit the ground running?
Yeah. Yes, of course. That's on my mind for sure. Nkunku, Jackson, Darwin Núñez, those are the 3 players that, a player like Watkins opens up if need be. You might not even need to sell Watkins because he's somebody, again, you'd comfortably hold for 8 weeks before you potentially thinking about wildcarding.
He was very consistent at the end of last season, wasn't he? Yeah. Made himself fixture-proof in many ways. Yeah. So I suppose the question here is, and I suppose it's probably a mean way of asking if we look at it in isolation, Watkins versus Pedro, Watkins giving you that extra flexibility, those sorts of things, did they really, sort of like prick at your conscience when you're thinking about Salah versus no Salah?
Yeah, I mean, let's look at the 5 players that are different, and the upgrades are quite massive, right? We're talking about Onana, Stones, Jota, Martinelli, and Watkins versus Pedro, Salah, Foden / Matoma, Akanji, and Johnston. Like, there are 2 or 3 positions in which the upgrades are quite substantial, especially getting what Watkins, who likes a steady pick, getting that second Arsenal attacker who looks like a no-brainer. Like if I look at it, just 5 players versus 5 players, it's sort of like a no-brainer to go with the no Salah draft. But until Tuesday, Wednesday, at least I don't want to drop considering the no Salah draft and see where we go after that.
Do you think that there might be things after those days that will perhaps help? I mean, I suppose we might get some injury news or some additional bits of preseason. Is there anything that you're looking out for that you anticipate would tilt you one way or the other, or is it very much still, we'll wait and see?
The 3 things that I'm really looking out for over the weekend games are: is there a 5.0 million Man City defender that might look like he's going to be nailed? Like whether if Walker's sold, then somebody like an Akanji, his minutes go up, expected minutes go up. Is Guardiola going to be fit? If he's going to be fit, then Ake looks like a no-go at the moment. So that's one thing. And whether Pedro is legit as an enabler. Like I'm guessing that the managers will start playing closer to the first team in the last game before game week 1, right? So does Pedro feature in that? What am I thinking there? That's the question. But again, he's not probably going to be a 90-minute man. He's probably going to get 60, 70 minutes. So that's the piece of information I'm waiting for. And I'm waiting to see if it looks to me like a Liverpool attacker not named Mo Salah is first choice. Because right now, Gakpo or Yakpo, whichever way you want to pronounce it, Darwin, Luis Diaz, and Jota are fighting for 2 spots. So that's also, I want to see if any sort of information emerges there as well.
Yeah, because I mean, some people were looking at Nunez, weren't they? Of course, and then Gakpo started the Bayern Munich game, which kind of would suggest that he's more first choice, which makes a lot of sense when you consider how Nunez, for example, finished the end of last season. So we should get some more information from these games coming up. I mean, with Pedro, he, I believe, is ahead of all other Brighton forwards for minutes played in the preseason, but he's only ahead of Welbeck by 2 minutes. So we do need one more game to give us information there. It's Rayo Vallecano, I think it is. So it's, not awful opposition, La Liga opposition there. So hopefully would tell us some more information. I mean, with Brighton, actually, a lot of people are very much seeing them as a short-term sort of thing. So if you felt like you were relatively confident that Pedro would maybe start 2 of the first 3, and then game week 3, 4 is largely when people are thinking about moving them to someone else when their fixtures stiffen up, would that be enough for you? Even because you, of course, acknowledge that Brighton are going to rotate a lot this year, but maybe not so much before European football kicks in. Would you be happy with that? It's just how long-term your Brighton thoughts are, I suppose.
I'm perfectly happy. My Brighton lens is slightly different. Ever since De Zerbi came into the league, they were behind only Man City for underlying attacking numbers. I see them as that attacking. They don't really care about who the opposition is. Whoever the opposition is, they're going to go out there and attack. So it's almost like a better version of Leeds United, where you have attackers capable of scoring whoever the opposition is. And if you're looking at the first 6 games, it's Luton home, Wolves away, West Ham United at home, then Newcastle home, United away, and then Bournemouth at home. I think from an attacking perspective, these 6 fixtures are fine. So I don't think the purview for Brighton is as short-term as people are making it out to be.
Does that perhaps make it more important for you to find someone who's going to play more minutes, I suppose, if that's the way you're thinking, which maybe is an additional headache for you?
Yeah, that's right. So I'm going to be paying close attention to them. Like downgrading Foden to Mitoma and getting a Neil City defender sort of enables that. And then I have to see what to do with the Pedro spot. Maybe I upgrade him to Visa. Those are the things I'm contemplating at the moment.
Yeah. I suppose it would also be good to get your thoughts on Mbeumo, I suppose, because you seem interested in Vissa. Haven't really talked much about Mbeumo, which I can probably imagine why. Perhaps because Vissa is the more attacking of the two. But has Mbeumo entered your thoughts at all in this preseason?
So in the 6.5 million price bracket and midfield bracket, I prefer Eze, I prefer Mitoma, and I prefer Diaby to him. He's 4th in that spot for me. Just because, like I mentioned, right, Brentford are losing their best player at the top of the spine and at the bottom of the spine. And I don't know whether we see a downturn in that performance. So I'm much more comfortable. I think Eze is my favorite in that 6.5 million bracket, and then Mitoma, and then I'm still monitoring what a Diaby might be doing. So those are the 3 players that have over him.
Yeah, Mbeumo was definitely, he was like in everybody's team to begin with, but his interest in him does seem to
Yeah.
have
I
dwindled.
mean, the
So
fixtures are ridiculous. They're absolutely ridiculous. So I absolutely get it. It's just, I foresee maybe wanting to hold on to this player in that 6.5 midfield million spot for a longer time. So let's see.
before we round up, in terms of how you are maybe sort of viewing the weeks beyond game week 1, are there particular points in the first 6 game weeks where you're anticipating some big changes? We've already loosely talked about Chelsea, Spurs, for example. A lot rides on a number of different things, but how do you envisage, or because nobody likes to book in transfers, but how do you envisage your transfer plans perhaps maybe shifting in game week 3, game week 4, 5, 6, etc., and just who at those clubs you've perhaps got an eye on?
Yeah, so that's the thing with Salah, right? So if I have Salah in my team, uh, I think having the second most expensive player in the game sort of offers max flexibility, where I can jump on to a Heung-min Son if he emerges as an option, or any of the Chelsea attackers as well. So there's money to play around with. That's why I'm being careful to not spread the funds around if I'm going without Mo Salah as well, because it just leads to more flexibility. And I foresee us wanting to move on to the right Spurs or Chelsea attackers in Game Week 3, and I'm open to a -4, maybe a -8 if opportunities present in Game Week 3 to jump on the right attackers.
Those big hits sometimes are involved when you upside chase as well. And I remember something else that you've said before as well, and you sort of alluded to it at the beginning of the video, just about how every season is different, and sometimes hits will pay off, sometimes they won't.
Yeah.
Is it maybe too soon to get an inkling for whether or not that's going to work this year, or with us returning to a more linear season, do you anticipate that having an impact on how effective hits can be? I suppose because you do like a hit when you have the opportunity to take one.
Yeah. The thing is, ever since Erling Haaland has entered the league, and if it's a linear season without blanks or doubles, the need to take a hit is somewhat reduced, because whatever you do, whoever can have an incredibly great fixture, you have Haaland playing a game, and Haaland playing a game makes him a captaincy option. So that sort of reduces the need to take a hit. But one thing that's always in my head is, let's say if Chelsea go on a great run of fixtures, or a Spurs go on a great run of fixtures, the chances of you catching a haul, especially in an FPL ecosystem where everybody is adapting very quickly to the changes that we see in the footballing world, uh, the probability increases if you get in your player earlier, if you're convinced about him. So that's the reason why I'd probably be looking at it. If I have a medium term view for that player, if I made up my mind in game week 3 that, you know what, I'm going to wildcard around game week 8, not in the next 2 or 3 weeks, that's when I need to make sure I take the hit, so that I'm hoping it pays off in the next 5 weeks. Because asking for a hit to pay off in 1 week is unreasonable. You have to give yourself some time for that to pay off.
Yeah, it's all about having a look ahead to what's coming up that makes all the difference. But yeah, thank you very much, of course, for talking through your different teams. I mean, it's been really fascinating to see 2 different teams, but at the same time, how similar they are. And I think that's going to be really effective for the decisions you make. In the next, we've got about 10 days now, I think it is. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But speaking of looking ahead, perhaps you might want to tell us when we can next catch you on the wire. You've probably got lots of episodes coming up. So yeah, tell us a bit about what's coming up when, and how other people who maybe aren't familiar with the wire can find you and the other guys.
I mean, we did a monster pod covering all of defense a couple of days ago with Pras and Zofar. I thought it was a great discussion, a lot of strategy, meta conversation. If you're not sure about your defense, I think that 2 hour conversation should sort you out. But we're dropping content every alternate day at the moment. I think we have a 30-40 minute episode on Arsenal coming from fans on our Discord who are great, and they've got great insights. And especially people are interested in the Arsenal conversation after Gabriel Jesus got injured. I have an interview with Distance Covered, who features on the Anfield Wrap. We're doing a 30-40 minute video on Liverpool as well. And then on Monday or Tuesday, we're doing a long pod again covering all attackers with Pras and Zoff both.
Amazing stuff. It's going to be essential viewing, I think, over the next couple of days, especially those talking points as well, really drilling down into the detail. It's that's what you're always going to get with the wire. So yeah, looking forward to that. Thank you very much for telling us all about that. One quick reminder before we go to make sure you do sort out your Fantasy Football Scout membership before the start of the season. Save up to 30% on those preseason prices. And if you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit that bell notification. But with that, we shall leave you guys to the rest of your tinkering, and we shall see you next time.
Thank you so much, David.